I was critically ill, and my husband came up to me and said, I can't take care of you. I have a business to run, and you need to look after yourself. Well, guys, you know what they say about karma, because now the tables have turned and he's chronically sick. He was just diagnosed with a disease, and I tell him, you know what? I'm a little too busy to deal with him, and his mom thinks I'm the devil. I always knew men could be twisted and two-faced. Sometimes they're calm, caring, and attentive to their women's needs, but others, they're cold and uninterested. But I used to think it should not be the point of life being at risk. Before I get married, I studied how my parents and those around me struggled with their marriages. So I concluded that no man was perfect, but it could be bearable if they would still try to cover some loopholes. Little did I know what was in my marriage store for me. I married Alfred, embracing all of his imperfections because I believed I wasn't perfect either. However, there's a boundary people should draw when displaying certain character. It all depends on the extremity of the situation and the possible consequences on human life. Alfred does not give a darn about boundaries or consequences. He acts as his cold mind dictates to him. We've been married for over 18 years through an arranged marriage by our parents. Many people would not relate to an arranged marriage, but I didn't mind. Do you know why? It did not make a difference to me. My parents found each other and got married after falling in love, but their marriage turned into shambles after a few years, and all they had to do for the rest of their journey was endure and struggle. I knew they stayed together for so long because of my two siblings and me. We grew up watching them constantly nagging and attacking each other, and it was not a good sight to behold. If a marriage induced by love could turn out that bitter, I thought an arranged marriage would not be a big deal. Alfred and I have two children, Mark and Lovelyn. They also grew up watching us struggle to keep our relationship as decent as possible. I understand that Alfred is busy grounding and growing his business. He's a very ambitious soul and does not take work for granted, but still family came first. At least that's what I hear people say, but he never had time to be around our children as they were growing. It was one business trip after the other. As for me, I did not really mind his frequent trips, because that saved me from a lot of trouble. I had more peace of mind whenever he wasn't around. He always found something unpleasant to talk about, and he hasn't been a good companion for me nor a friendly father to the children. I got so used to him not caring and not being available. As long as I was fine, I played my role as a wife and mother to the best of my ability. But I never thought that he would extend his personal character just beyond regular daily life. But I had it dawn on me that he was worse than I thought when I fell ill. I've been feeling some constant headaches and body aches, but I thought it was a mild thing since that was not the first time. I'd often felt that way, but would take pain relief at most times, and I would feel better. I didn't even have the time to look after my health because I was more in charge of keeping home. We could not hold any maid or servant down because of Alfred's cranky behavior. He would not pay them on time and kept complaining about what did not exist, even though they were trying their best. So whenever the maids found a better working environment, they left. It was a full-time housewife I became, but I started working when I realized that Alfred wasn't only uncaring and unstingy. He didn't care about my needs. But I was grateful that he cared for the children's education, so with my mom's support, I could set up a new trade. I had to work hard to bring it to stability, and it wasn't easy coping with housekeeping at the same time. So I thought the sudden headache and body ache were the results of the increased stress that I'd undergone for months until that afternoon when it seemed more severe than I could have ever felt. I was in the kitchen, and I began to feel weak and dizzy. I left what I was doing and went to lay on the cushion. After some minutes, I heard my mother-in-law's voice. Her coarse and grumpy voice forced my eyes open. She yelled at me that I was lazying around while cooking. I told her, well, that's because I'm not feeling well, but I said that to some deaf ears. She lashed out at me, saying I should have tried to finish cooking before retiring to rest, as that was what was responsible of a woman to do. I didn't know why she had to come around then, though it was her manner to come unannounced. I felt terrible because she did not care about my health. That was what my mom would never do. She prioritized health above all things.
I had a choice to disregard her comments and nagging, but I needed peace and space to rest well, which she would never let me have if I did not do her bidding. So I managed to finish cooking and serving her. Alfred came home and met his mom complaining bitterly about me after she had eaten my food. But he didn't say anything about it at all, didn't stand up for me. I wasn't surprised at his attitude since it had become the norm. On countless occasions, his mom disrespected and insulted me for no good reason in his presence, and he would not say a thing about it. Sometimes he even added his insults because he always felt I was the guilty one. I wouldn't say I liked involving him in my matters because of his lack of concern, but my health was getting complicated, and he was the closest family in range, so I told him I wasn't feeling well. He asked me to take some pain relief, and that was all. I wasn't expecting much from him, but since it was rare for me to complain about anything to him, I thought he would take me more seriously, mainly when I had explained the severity of the pain I was feeling. It was heartbreaking that Alfred treated my health as something trivial. I'd always reasoned out why my mom stayed with my dad, until his demise despite their fights. But I understood better that day, see. If it wasn't for my children, there was nothing good for me to hold on to in the marriage. I finally understood what my mom had to go through for us. The next day, Alfred did not even ask me how I felt. He only called me to hurry up to serve his breakfast. I challenged him about not inquiring about my health, and he said I was making too much out of something tiny and assumed I was much better since I woke up early, as usual. Can you imagine? I was short of words and just stared at him in disbelief. He knew I was angry from my expression, but he ignored me and continued to eat. My mother-in-law came to the dining table and started eating her already served breakfast. She also did not ask how I was doing. Feeling better? Nothing. The next thing she would say was that her breakfast was cold. I told her I served her breakfast several minutes ago because she always complained about late breakfast. Still, she decides to come out and her convenience, only to complain about her breakfast getting cold. I almost shunned her but controlled myself because arguing with her would bring me more work. And I didn't need that at that moment, so I warmed it up, and I went to my room. I'm now feeling a bit better, but I always wish I were married into a better family. My children, they're lovely, but my husband and mother-in-law are thorns in my side. I don't know what to do about Alfred anymore, and I'm scared of my relapse in my health. I plan to create time to visit the hospital for a proper medical checkup. I'd always embraced the fact that Alfred was business-focused, But to think that he could not care less about my health, that's the height of it, man. I would gladly use any profitable advice that you guys can give me. Update number 1. Hello, friends. It's been 3 months since I've last wrote. I appreciate the words of encouragement. I got better after the last episode, thinking I would find time to go to the hospital for a checkup. But I got engrossed with my new retail business, which had not gotten a good foothold in the industry. My health, which I had thought was getting better, began to deteriorate again. I was at home one afternoon when I felt a splitting headache, which started as a slight headache in the morning. It became so severe that it affected my vision, and before I knew it, I passed out. Luckily, my children were on holiday, so they called for help and I was rushed to the hospital. When I woke up, I asked my kids if they had called their father because he did not travel this time. He was at work. They hesitated for a second, and then Mark told me not to bother about him because I had enough to deal with. I insisted I wanted to know whether he was aware of the situation, and Loveland said that they called him, but he said he was busy and would come and visit me later. My heart broke because I was told I had been omitted for several hours, yet Alfred was nowhere to be found. Well, later on, the doctor told me I was stressed out, and that was why I passed out, but he suspected an underlying factor that triggered those stress symptoms. So he asked me to take some tests, but it would take some time to make a diagnosis. I did. I was on discharge the next day, and Alfred still did not come to check on me. I went home and demanded an explanation, and all he could muster up was that he had an important meeting with one of his high-esteemed clients, and by the time he got home he was tired and thought of checking on me the next day and found out that I was already on my way home. I was too exhausted to argue, so I expressed my disappointment at his insensitivity, and my children took me to the room to rest. Shortly after, my mother-in-law came around again. The children told her what happened to me, and she managed to greet me, but not without dropping some hurtful words. She told me it was not a time to break down and that I had to get well soon because Alfred's company was becoming more recognized, which engaged him more than before. And it would not be nice if, he came back home and did not find something nourishing to eat. Guys, I was so dumbfounded. My son was there when she blurted out that nonsense, and Mark told her it wasn't the right time to say such things to me. For crying out loud, I was just discharged from the hospital. Well, she shut him up and told him he would understand better when he grew into a man and had his own family, but my son maintained that he would never let his wife be treated the way I was treated in this household. The little dispute almost escalated into a significant issue, as my mother-in-law thought my son was talking to her rudely. But I quickly intervened and told Mark to calm down. I faced my mother-in-law and told her that even if I only existed to be your son's cook and homekeeper, I still had to recover. I also asked her if she would say all that to me if I were her biological daughter. I expressed my disappointment that she took my health as unimportant. She became mute and looked at me with a mix of expression and anger and helplessness. She wouldn't want to say more because my son was ready to attack her with those words on my behalf, so she left in anger. At dinner, Loveland did the cooking. She made bone broth soup for me because of my health, while she made something else for others. I had my meal and was still resting when Alfred barged in. He asked me how I could be such a failure as a mom. He said that the food Loveland had made was salty and that he couldn't eat it. I tried to make him understand that it wasn't the first time Loveland was making food and that it must have been a silly mistake, but it made things worse as I was accused of taking her side. My mother-in-law added fuel to the fire. I felt miserable and left them both nagging in the room while I went into the guest room to rest. I've been resting for a few days now, awaiting the test results that I did. Though I feel better, I'm still scared of the possible outcome, and I hope it won't add to my problems. Update number 2. Hey friends, it's been 5 months since we interacted. Thanks for your care and concern. I also wished it was nothing serious, but the test results were not very good. After my last update, my health had worsened. Alfred only cared about me not feeding him well since I've been down. My health was becoming more complicated, and I could not bear the discomfort anymore. One night I called Alfred to take me to the hospital, but he said that he was having a dinner party with some clients. I then asked my children to call me a cab to the hospital. On reaching there, the doctor said he was about to contact me to confirm my results, but it was good that I came. I was diagnosed with hepatitis C. The doctor told me I needed urgent treatment before it reached to the chronic stage. So I was admitted that night and I went through different phases of treatment. I didn't feel any better. Alfred managed to check on me once on the 5th day. He didn't even spend 10 minutes before he left. My children resumed school but had to attend to me for some time so I wouldn't be alone. Initially, I didn't want to bother my aged mother, but I had no choice. She came around and cried her eyes out. She called Alfred, but he didn't answer. I'm sure he did it on purpose because he was not bold enough to tell my mom he was busy, as he always told me. After some time, we needed more money as I had spent all of my money on treatment. I thought Alfred would be different regarding financial support, but he was the same. My kids asked him for money, but he told them they had to invest in a big project that he had been pursuing for a long time, and did not have enough spare money, except they would want him to use their tuition fee for my treatment. My children agreed, but he told me that they were out of their mind. They told him that they would rather drop out of school than see me suffer and die for lack of medical treatment, but he ignored it. My mom practically went to the company and stayed in the lounge for hours waiting to speak to him, but he did not oblige. After so late, when he was about to leave, my mom crossed his path and insulted him. My mother accused him of being irresponsible and cruel to his wife. She told him he would reap what he sowed and came to the hospital, explaining all that's happened, and she told me that she would sell the land my late father left for us, which was supposed to be our inheritance. My family, we used to be rich before my dad's business failed, so we sold all that he had except the house my mom lived in. That land to pay off his debt. I cried because I didn't want that land to be sold. I even personally called Alfred, but he did not pick up. He texted me to warn my mom not to repeat what she did to him. He said that he had to take care of his new business deal personally and would send whatever he could afford for my treatment. He did send some money, but it could not take care of the drugs. I needed it urgently, not to mention the treatment. Oh man, my mother-in-law came around just once too. She told my mom and me to try to understand Alfred. She said the business deal was dear to him because it was his long-time dream. But is that enough to risk my life over? Does his business have more value than a human life? The questions were driving me crazy. So, my mom told her that she and her son would suffer the consequences of their actions, and my mother-in-law angrily left. Eventually, we had to sell the land because I had to live. My siblings also sent a little token they could afford, and I was treated. I began to get much better, and my mother told me that she would not let me return to that house. I told her not to worry and that I wasn't going to Alfred as his wife, but as a vengeful woman who would make him pay for treating me like crap. Finally, I'm okay after about 5 months of severe struggling. When I came home, Alfred gave me the excuse that he had traveled to close his business deal and that when he came back, he was afraid my mom would embarrass him, so he kept away from me. What an irritable excuse! Anyways, I'm back to lay in, wait for an opportunity to pay Alfred back for what he did to me. But I'm not good at devising things. Do you guys have any ideas? Please, let me know. Update number 3. Hey guys, I lost track of time, and when I was about to write this update, I discovered it's been over a year. Wow, time flies. Thanks for being such friends with whom I could share my burdens. Sincerely, I often feel relieved whenever I share my ordeal. It made me believe the saying that a problem shared is half solved. Thanks a bunch for being there for me, internet strangers. Well, guess what? Let me update you with the latest news. I once talked about how how bad I was in devising tactics, right? But luck was on my side, so I only needed to do something after Alfred got what he deserved. Should I say that it was the effect of my mom's painful words against him? Whichever was the case, he reaped what he sowed. After I went home feeling better, I stopped cooking for him and stopped doing house chores. I moved my things to the guest room and had no more intimate relations with him. He complained and even reported it to his mom, who came to rail insults at me, but I gave her what she deserved. I told her I'd had enough of her insults and that if she cared so much for her son, she should get an enslaved person for him for a wife. She was shocked at my reaction because that was unlike me. Alfred had no choice but to employ a maid. He wanted to treat me like before because he thought that I was the usual me who would run around and do things for him. But he was severely disappointed. I would have filed a divorce straight away, but not without making him a little taste of this nonchalant attitude. I also worked hard to make my business come alive. I've handed it over to a trusted agent while in the hospital, but I needed more funds because I've spent all my money on health. So I had to get a loan from the bank. I promised myself that I would not ask Alfred for anything again except to claim what was mine. Like I said, luck was on my side when he came home on a particular afternoon. Looking tired, that was very unlike the vigorous Alfred I knew. Without asking, he told me to get him some pain relief that he wasn't feeling well. Well, I called the maid to get it for him, and he did not go to work the next day. He then asked his driver to take him to the hospital, after which I was told that he had been admitted. At first, I did not feel good because I was worried about him, but I choked it. I called his mother to inform her, and that was the most I could do. She rushes to the hospital, and I later heard he was diagnosed with cancer of the lymphatic system. In a few days, he was placed in intensive care, and the children came home and visited their father. But I sent a message that I was overwhelmed with my business and would not be able to attend to him. See, there wasn't anything I would do there anyways. His mother came home to nag me that I was an evil woman who did not wish her son well. I told her the same thing I had told her son. I was occupied with work and her insults intensified. I responded that she and her son were getting a payback for how they treated me, and that they should face their problems. I left her angry, shouting, and went to my room until she left. Alfred is yet to return home, and I'm somehow feeling bad, at least for my children. I don't want them to see me as a lousy woman. After all, Alfred is still their father. Final updates. Hey guys, chatting with you again after 8 months is pleasant. Thank you for the good words, but for the wrong opinions, everyone is entitled to theirs, so no problem. Finally, I did what I should have done years ago. Marriage isn't all about having a husband or children, it's much more about gaining the respect and support we deserve as humans. I didn't realize this earlier, and that's why I endured so much neglect and pain. Alfred was finally discharged after 6 months of intensive treatment, which demanded a lot of money. He still has to live on drugs for now to manage his health. He was lucky that the cancer had not eaten deep into his lymph nodes. He came home very angry. He hurled curses at me, saying he cursed the day he met me and that he didn't believe I could be this irresponsible because I didn't once visit him. I only called him once to repay his one-time visitation when I was sick. I then told him that it was me who was, accursed for marrying such a cruel, heartless man. I told him the pain he was feeling was the same I've gone through when he abandoned me for weeks and did not even give me much financial support because he had his growing company. Well, I was also growing my business. Well, that settled it. It was tit for tat. Will you look at this man's audacity? He had suddenly forgotten that this was exactly how he treated me when I was in a dire situation. He told me he could not live with me anymore. And I told him I couldn't have waited, because I wanted something more pleasant. He was shocked because he thought that I would beg him, but I made him realize I only came back to get back at him. He was infuriated and shouted at me to get out. I told him no. He has no right to chase me out because the house is mine. See, we were on this when one of his employees came. Alfred saw him and excused himself, and he had contacted him to meet him at the home regarding his business. I already knew what it was. Well, because somebody had told me that the two of his workers duped him out of a considerable sum of money while he was in the hospital. But I didn't intervene. After all, he did not put me in charge in his business or spend money on me. When he returned to the living room, he could not nag me anymore. He sluggishly dragged his feet to his room because of the bad news he heard. His business was drowning and the traitors were nowhere to be found. I wasn't excited, and neither did I feel bad for him. Instead, I felt waves of anger vibrating through my system. People reap what you sow. He thought he was doing well when he abandoned me for a week. But now that work was crumbling right before his eyes and there was nothing he could do. I'd never seen him feel that helpless, which served me justice. Shortly after the incident, I filed for a divorce and claimed that the bungalow we lived in for me and my children, as, some of his properties are mine. I had a reasonable attorney and the court ruled in my favor. I couldn't go empty-handed after all my years by his side. He also had to continue catering for the children's studies. He left the house feeling frustrated and sad because he was almost broke. I later heard he took loans after selling some properties to support his failing business. That's no longer my business. I'm now free and happier than I've ever been. And my children understand why I had to do what I did, and no, they don't judge me. At least they know that they make me happy. Thank you all for your company throughout my trying times. I appreciate it. This is the last time I'll give you any updates. I wish you all the best.